And good afternoon, and welcome to Thursdays with Charlie. This is episode 33 on the 17th of December 2020, 1 week before Christmas Eve. And so, I might have shown some of you this Christmas tree at Mass over the weekend. Beautiful owl tree made of owl material by one of our parishioners. And then another parishioner gave me the beautiful owl ornament. And another parishioner gave me the COVID mask. So my COVID Christmas tree is all set for decoration for this season. Well, 1 week to go until Christmas Eve. Our Governor Steve Sisolak, made the announcement on Sunday late afternoon that we are going to stay at 50 people limit for the churches. Casinos and restaurants in Nevada are at 25% of capacity. We're limited to only 50 people, and that's going to stay in effect at least until January the 15th. We are in much better shape than in New York, which is not allowing indoor or outdoor dining in restaurants. We're in better shape than California, which is not allowing not only restaurants, but also churches have no indoor services. So we are able to worship inside, which is a good thing. Now, we've been able to put on some extra masses with the 50-person limit. We are severely limited as to the number of people who will be able to attend Mass in person. And so we have permission from the diocese to have Mass early on Christmas Eve, which is a help to us. So you're going to receive a letter in the mail this week. I might have received it by the time you're watching the show, and there'll be copies available at the weekend Masses. We're going to have 4 Masses on Christmas Eve, beginning at 2:30. A 2:30 in the afternoon Christmas Eve Mass, a 4 o'clock Mass, a 6 p.m. Mass, and an 8 p.m. Mass. And then on Christmas Day, we'll have 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and 12 noon. So that's a total of 7 Masses for Christmas. That allows us to get 350 slots for people to come and attend and worship with us online. Now, I have the help of one of our parishioners, Terry Sheehan. Her brother John is a Jesuit priest, and he's going to be visiting us over the Christmas holidays. So he will be saying some of the Christmas Masses. I'm not sure which ones he will have yet, and I will have the rest of them. So that enables us to be a little more relaxed in that. Doors will open at the church 25 minutes before each of the Masses. We're limited to 50 people, and reservations are required. Now, the way we're going to do reservations is this weekend when you come to Mass. Presumably you've made reservations today or tomorrow to come this weekend for Mass. We will take in-person registrations at the Mass or this weekend for Christmas and New Year's and the weekends around them. You can make that reservation when you come to Mass this weekend. After that, you could make reservations on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of December for Christmas or for New Year's. All of this is explained in the letter that went out to all of our parishioners, and I'll have it for all of you in writing this weekend as well. But the church office will be closed Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. So reservations will be taken in person this weekend, or they'll be taken Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of December this coming week. Remember, we're allowed only 50 people per Mass. And so once the Masses are filled, that Mass is full. Now, other options are virtual Mass will be broadcast beginning at 8 a.m. on Christmas Day. So you can stay home and enjoy the Mass from the quiet and the peace and the safety and security of your own home, if that suits your schedule, and you're certainly welcome to do that. Bishop Thomas has given a dispensation from the obligation to attend Mass. It extends all the way to December 31st, and in all likelihood will be extended later this week to cover the month of January as well. So we look forward to that. The Mass will be broadcast on our Facebook page, which is Laughlin Catholic. It's available on YouTube, SJB Catholic, and it's available on our website, laughlincatholic.com. The Christmas Mass, like our regular Sunday Mass, will be broadcast beginning at 8 a.m. on Christmas Day. So please make reservations if you'd like. We can take up to 50 people. After that, we can suggest that you attend another Mass. I can tell you from experience, the Christmas Eve Masses are always more crowded than the Christmas Day ones. So perhaps if you cannot get into the 50 people for any of the 4 Christmas Eve Masses, there's probably a good chance that you can make a reservation for Christmas Day. And also, in view of the numbers, please, if you do make a reservation, please be sure to come and use it, because we deprive somebody else of that space if you don't show up. And we hope you will. Now, you've probably heard the good news that a vaccine from Pfizer has been approved. The one from Moderna is probably going to be approved soon. They're considered to be about 95% effective. But still, the wearing of masks, the washing of hands, and the keeping of a social distance, not sneezing on one another, are probably the safest things to get us through this pandemic. And then the vaccinations are beginning. They have already begun in many places and will be continuing, obviously, through the winter, the spring, and the summer. We are blessed that the Supreme Court has defended our First Amendment rights in the case involving the Diocese of Brooklyn, New York, and the Jewish community against the governor of New York, and that was ruled in the favor of religion. Religion is not some side thing. It's an essential in our company, in our country, and we're blessed by having a constitution that regards it as essential. The very first amendment speaks of the government shall make no restrictions regarding the expression of religion, the free exercise thereof. And so we hope that will come more and more into play. One of the commentators pointed out that, we can't have government invading our worship and telling us how and when we can worship. The very term church comes from the Greek term ecclesia, which means a gathering. It's very important, especially in the Catholic tradition, for us to gather when possible, to be together, to celebrate the Eucharist, to receive the Eucharist. I always say that, watching a Mass is good if there's nothing else that can be done, but it's like watching a cooking show and expecting to be filled. You're not going to be filled because you're watching something. You're not there actually receiving the Eucharist. So we hope that the time will come soon when we can all be back together. Speaking of the effects of this pandemic in our society, it is now being estimated that 1/3 of the restaurants in the United States will not reopen. 1/3 of that's thousands of restaurants will not reopen after this pandemic. They've been closed for so long, and that's kind of sad to see them go. We hope that many can be saved. St. Francis of Assisi, whose feast day is on October the 4th, has a lot to do with Christmas, and I think that some people are not yet aware of the fact that he was credited with being the first person to set up a nativity scene, a Christmas creche, and he did it outside in Greccio, Italy in 1223. He set up the first nativity scene that we're used to, and it was he who decided that it should be life-size and living, so it was actually living people and it was living animals. It was a live nativity set. And when he came to set up the place where the manger would be, in his mind, manger meant being in a stable like he was familiar with seeing in Italy. And so it's really St. Francis of Assisi that we can credit with giving us the basic shape of our Christmas stable, the manger scene, the camels, the sheep, the goats, the Blessed Mother, the St. Joseph, the child Jesus, the wise men, and all of that. And that was in 1223 that he did that. Now, we have a special occasion coming this year, and you've probably heard about it on the news. There's a thing called the Great Conjunction. This is an alignment of the planets Saturn and Jupiter. And when they line up close to one another, at least close to one another as far as us seeing them, they're still millions of miles apart from one another, but they line up in the same line of vision, it really looks very, very bright, and perhaps, just perhaps, this is what God arranged to be the Christmas star, the Star of Bethlehem that the wise men saw. Now, this is going to be visible in our area this coming week. The last time they were aligned this closely was on March 4th in 1226. March 4th, 1226 was the last alignment, the last great conjunction this close. So you get to see it. Begin to be visible in the southwestern sky tonight, the 17th of December, but the best time to view it will be Monday night, December 21st, just after dusk, to be looking up in the southwest sky, and you'll see something that very likely could have been the Christmas star. This conjunction, the great conjunction of these two planets, Saturn and Jupiter, might have been what the wise men saw and with the naked eye viewed it as a single star and thought that this might be very much what they should follow. It's a beautiful thing. It's a great reminder for Christmas. I will throw in one mention for Christmas. Some of you know that a few years ago I wrote a Christmas book, Timmy and the Christmas Owl. I don't know if you've got a chance to look at it. It's got some beautiful large print, very large print, and beautiful hand-done drawings inside. If you are interested, some of these are still available at the church office for $5 each, and you're certainly welcome to stop by and pick up a copy if you'd like to see one. We got a couple of good questions for this week and a couple of ones that rehashed ideas that we've talked a little bit about. One question was, what is the key row? And I think people are familiar with the symbol, the key row. And what the key row is, it's the Greek letters, which would be the key, which is this what looks like an X to us, and the row, which looks like a P in Greek. It's the first letters of the name Christ, Christ, Christ. The key row is one of the earliest Christian symbols. That marking is found on altars and on tombs and on markings of churches and on vestments down through the centuries. And the key row is a connection with the word Christ. It's the name for Jesus, his title. Actually, it's not his last name. Jesus is not Mr. Christ. Christ is a title, meaning the anointed one, the one sent by God. And so that's the key row. Second question dealt with indulgences. Indulgences are something that have been around in the church for a long, long time, almost going back to the beginning. And a couple of things that we might mention about indulgences. They're the remission of the remaining effects of sin. Now, some people have tried to say that, well, a plenary indulgence means no time in purgatory, and a partial indulgence means less time in purgatory. The problem with that is that in eternity, where purgatory is, there is no time. So you can't speak of 12 days or 20 months or 500 years or whatever. It doesn't exist outside of earthly time. And so when we speak of an indulgence as being partial, we mean that it's not quite complete. When we speak of it being a plenary indulgence, we say it is complete. And the way the church views indulgences is that there are certain practices, whether it be the visit to a certain church, as we did here during the Holy Year some years ago, had people visit our church or one of the major churches in Rome. It could be a practice like watching a particular scene or praying a particular prayer. It almost always involves three other things: attending Mass at some point, receiving Holy Communion at some point, and going to confession. The final thing is the person receiving the indulgence is supposed to offer some specific prayers for the intentions of the Pope. And so attending Mass, going to confession, receiving communion, and praying for the Pope. And then the one other thing that's connected with the indulgence is whatever the particular work is. Is it visiting a church or saying a particular other prayer that is indulgenced? Indulgences are a way the church found to get people to notice these things, to visit them in cases of geographic places, or to pray a certain prayer, to become familiar with it. It was a way of doing it. Sometimes they are expressed in terms of, 100 days indulgence. It does not mean 100 days less in purgatory, because there are no days in purgatory. It means that there's some lessening. It's not complete. And then plenary indulgences means it's complete. And these can be applied, I might add, to yourself or to a deceased relative or friend. And so people sometimes pray an indulgence prayer for themselves, and sometimes they do it for the sake of a relative or friend, a parent, that they might want to recall and remember. Again, it does a good thing by having them remember it. We got a question that's very current about Advent candles. If you noticed in the churches and in many homes, you'll see an Advent wreath. It's a Christmas wreath, a green wreath, and it has 4 candles. 3 of the candles are purple, and 1 of the candles is pink. The order in which they're lit is it goes purple, purple, pink, purple. So the first week of Advent is 1 candle, a purple one. The second week of Advent, 2 candles, both purple. The third week of Advent, you add the pink candle, as we did this past Sunday. And the fourth week of Advent is all 3 purple candles plus the pink one. You can go around the wreath clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't matter. But the third week is always the pink candle for rejoicing. It comes from the Latin word gaudete, rejoice. And so it marks the fact that we're more than halfway on our way to Christmas. It's a joyous celebration. Fourth question was interesting. It was about genuflection. Why do we genuflect? When do we genuflect? What is genuflection? The word itself means bending the knee. Genuflection. Most people genuflect by putting their right knee on the floor and then standing up. It's usually easier to genuflect if you've got something to hold on to in the front. I found that after I had injured my hand, I don't have as much strength to push up on my knee to get back up off the floor from genuflecting. So you might notice that I more likely replace the genuflection with a bow now. Genuflection used to be something that was done every time you entered or left the pew in church, and you were genuflecting to the tabernacle, which at the time was on the main altar. So genuflection was always to the center of the church. And you were genuflecting to the tabernacle, which was on the main altar, because the tabernacle contained the body of Christ, the hosts that were in the ciboria waiting to be distributed at the next Mass or kept there to be brought to the sick later on. Now, you may have noticed in churches over the years, the tabernacle got disassociated from the main altar, so the tabernacle was sometimes in a separate chapel, or was sometimes off to the side, or was sometimes in a different position than on the main altar. So then it became, well, do we genuflect to the altar or to the tabernacle? And genuflection is reserved usually for the tabernacle, except in cases where you can't see the tabernacle, and then the altar would be the point of reference. You might also notice that the altar is reverenced by the priest and deacon. When they approach the altar, they generally kiss the altar as a sign of reverence for it, because it will at some point be holding the body and the blood of Christ. Most people still genuflect when they come in or leave a church. An older congregation might tend to use the bow more frequently because it is easier. I know sometimes when I have gone down and genuflected on my right knee, I had serious doubts that I would stand up again that same day, and I thought that might be better if I went to a bow and did it. It's still a beautiful custom, and if it's done reverently and slowly, it really looks very nice. It is not a curtsy. It's not like the British curtsy before the Queen. It is something very deeply religious, and it usually, like I said, extends all the way to the floor, or a very deep bow in place of it. We received a question that I had dealt with earlier. I'm just going to touch on it lightly, about the Deuterocanonicals or the Apocrypha. There is a whole body of literature that's considered apocryphal. The word itself means of unknown origin. We're not sure exactly who wrote these pieces. In the Catholic Church, there were several of these books that were placed into the traditional Bible by the Church, because the Church felt that they were inspired by God, and so they're called deuterocanonical, second canon. The regular books in Scripture are considered canonical, and these are considered deuterocanonical, additional canonical books. Second canon would be the exact translation. The Protestants generally do not accept the Deuterocanonicals or the Apocrypha as being inspired by God, although they see generally no problem in reading them, but the inspiration they feel comes entirely from human minds. Catholics regard these books in the Bible, and there are 7 of them in the Catholic Bible, as being inspired by God, just like the other books. And so that's why if you look at a Protestant Bible, it has 66 books in it, and a Catholic Bible has 73. The difference is the 7 books that are called deuterocanonical or apocrypha that are added in it. They're beautiful. They're very beautiful writings. The most famous of them would be the books of Maccabees, 1 and 2 Maccabees, the book of Judith, and others that are in there. They contain stories that are very beautiful, very powerful religious stories, and we, from a Catholic perspective, say in some way God wanted us to know that information, and so we keep it in the Bible. The last question for today has to do with Catholic practices. What are the basic practices that Catholics follow throughout their lives? I think we've already mentioned one very much, the idea of being together for liturgy, for the Mass, receiving communion, is probably the preeminent Catholic practice. Yes, we can pray anywhere. You can pray outside on a hillside. You can pray out in the desert. You can pray in your room. But the epitome of Catholic prayer is praying together with a community of like-minded people, the other Catholics, having the opportunity to receive Holy Communion, being together for that. That's probably the epitome of Catholic practice. There are some things that are somewhat particular to Catholics, the idea of frequent confession, making known your sins to a priest, receiving absolution and forgiveness, usually on a regular basis. Perhaps not weekly or monthly, but at least seasonally. People see Lent or Christmas season as a time when they might want to make sure that they take the opportunity for confession. It's probably good to point out that, here at St. John the Baptist, even with the COVID virus and everything, we do hear confessions prior to every Mass, except on Christmas or on Easter, but we do that. So if you wanted to have your confession heard and not bother to make an appointment to come in for that, just arrive about 20 minutes before Mass and see me, and we'll be glad to take care of hearing your confession. We do that on a regular basis throughout the year. I guess among Catholic prayers and practices, the Rosary is preeminent. Most Catholics are very familiar with the beautiful prayers in the Rosary, the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Glory be to the Father, and the Hail Holy Queen, and the Apostles' Creed, which make it up. And that's a beautiful, particularly Catholic prayer. There are various sacramentals that Catholics use. We believe in using or heaping holy water, blessing ourselves with holy water, sprinkling holy water on items, blessing a car, blessing a home with holy water. We also believe in medals or scapulars, the crosses. Those are sacramental items that help us to remember our faith, to remember our prayers. The novena is a particularly Catholic prayer to offer something, either some prayers or time apart with God 9 times in a row, and that would be considered a novena. So the novena could be 9 days or 9 weeks or 9 months, but the number 9 figures prominently. The idea of having images or statues or holy cards of saints, of the Blessed Virgin Mary, of God, of various things, the holy books or the altar or pictures of churches, they tend to be very significant for Catholics. So those are probably important things to all Catholic devotionals and all Catholic practices. Not every Catholic does every one of them. Please know that some Catholics are much more familiar with some than with others, and that's because they've grown up with them, they culturally feel at home with them, or they've just found them to be very helpful to their own spirituality. Now it's time for our friend Pascal to come on down. Perhaps we'll have him decorated with some Christmas festivities next week, but we're always glad to see him. And he brings a Latin message, as always. And I think this one was particularly appropriate for the Christmas season when all of us will be giving or receiving some form of gifts. Acceptissima Semper Munera Sunt, auctor quae Pretiosa Facit. Basically that means, it's from Ovid, it's from the Roman poet Ovid, basically means those gifts are much more acceptable for whom we value the giver so much. So whatever a person gives us, if we value that person so much, we believe that it is really, really more valuable than perhaps it is. Perhaps the best example I can give of that, when my own mother celebrated her 80th birthday, I was opening gifts with her that her friends had given her. And some of them were really beautiful, and some of them were not so really beautiful. And my mother would sit there, and she was 80 years old, and I would tell her, who had brought this gift, and she would open it, and I would help her open it. And she would look at it, and whatever it was, she would look at the gift, and she would say, "Tell me something about the person who gave it." "Oh, that's from Emily. I've known her since the 1940s. I worked with her in the telephone company." And no matter what the gift was, it was wonderful because her memories of Emily, and that's why she regarded the gift so much. And the Roman poet Ovid knew that centuries ago, that we value the gifts we receive not because of the value of the gift, but because of the value we place on the giver of that gift. It's a good thought for us to keep in mind for Christmas. And by the way, speaking of Christmas, next week our show is on Christmas Eve. It will be broadcast beginning Christmas Eve, and you'll get to see a special Christmas show. Looking forward to that very, very much. And I promise I will not sing. You'll just get to enjoy it. God bless. Have a great week and an early Merry Christmas.